Hello and welcome back to A Sharper Life. I'm your host, Nikki Sharp, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I just sat down to write something for a project that I've been working on behind the scenes, and in doing so, I realized that it's been 10 years since I created my Instagram account, and I'm really grateful for those of you who have followed me from the beginning, for those of you who have followed me at some point throughout the journey, and the newer people in the community. And so in this episode, I wanted to share a little bit of a look back and at the same time, tell you and share more of me and my background, how I came to be doing what I'm doing, because regardless if you've been following me since day one in 2013 when I started the account, or you started following me yesterday, there is a lot that you don't know. And so I'm using this as a chance just for you to get to know me a little bit better, and in hopes that we continue to grow this community. And through that, with vulnerability and authenticity, we can create more magic in the world. So I'm just going to be sharing what I wrote, and I hope that it resonates in some way, shape, or form. And if you like this style of episode, please do let me know, leaving a review on Apple or sending me a direct message. So in 2013, I started an Instagram account where I'd post photos of healthy meals that I made, strong, what I call Fitspo girls who inspired me. And I would get photos from Pinterest and Tumblr, and then post them on my Instagram account. And I would post headless body shots of myself where I talked about my eating disorders and my body dysmorphia. And this was all in an attempt to keep myself accountable to getting better during some of the darkest days that I had experienced. And at the time, I was barely making any money while modeling. I had been let go of a personal assistant job that I was in, and I had no idea what I was doing in life. I was living in London at the time, and I was pretty unhappy. So 6 months later, while living in London, I was offered a well-paying executive assistant job in New York City with all expenses paid to move there and start afresh. And after flying in for the job, meeting with the team, and nearly accepting this, I had a little voice in my head that told me to turn it down. Now, this was not the first time that I'd heard this voice, but it was the clearest that I'd ever experienced it during an uncertain time. And the voice said, "You will do something in the wellness world." Now, I had no idea what that meant in the moment. All I knew was that I had this Instagram account that I had created in 2013, and I was sharing things. I was getting followers with no intention to get the followers. But the voice said, "You will do something in the wellness world." And in moments like that, where you desperately need money, it can be hard to trust that inner voice that speaks to you. And yet that is just what I did. I gave myself 6 months during one of the hardest times of my life. And I told my parents, after 6 months, if I'm not making any money doing something that I was passionate about, I would go and find a quote unquote regular job. Now, I was broke. I was binging nearly every day, and I was extremely lonely while I was living in London during this time. At the same time, I had begun taking nutrition courses, and I fell in love with the power of food. It was like a light bulb moment went off in my head. Eat good food, feel good. Eat bad food, feel bad. And it's one of those aha moments, which is so profound yet so simple. And it's something that I needed to hear in that moment. So I began learning how to cook healthy and delicious meals, taking photos and sharing it on my blog. And I would post about how I was getting myself to drink more water with simple tips like putting a mint tea bag into a bottle of water, which, by the way, you don't need hot water for tea to brew. I would do things like taking a 1 liter bottle and marking it with times on it with a Sharpie marker just to get myself to drink more water. And with each of these videos, they began to go viral in their own right. Now, my Instagram account was at 5,000 followers or so at that point, to which I accredit it to my vulnerability and authenticity. And these are the magic pills, as I like to call them. And during the holidays that year in 2013, I was looking to do a detox, and specifically not a diet. And I found that there was nothing reasonable on the market. Shape magazine had a detox that said like have 6 spears of asparagus and a 4-ounce thing of salmon. Well, I don't like salmon, and I knew that from my restrictive nature of my eating disorders that if I was going to be super restrictive on the food, I was going to end up binging. And the only other one that was available, I think there were 2 others. There was a smoothie cleanse, and I was living in London where it was very cold at the time. I'm like, I don't want smoothies. It's freezing outside. And then there was the Gwyneth Paltrow, Alejandro Younger. It was a $400 supplement detox. And I was broke as a model, didn't have money for that. And I wanted to eat food. And so during that time, I downloaded the 5-day detox from Source or Spirit or Divine, whatever you want to call it, and it poured through me. I couldn't write fast enough as I was literally downloading, channeling this detox from above. And the detox went on to sell like wildfire globally. Within a few years, I'd sold 100,000 copies of the detox, creating other healthy living ebooks. And at one point, I was making up to $55,000 a month in 2014. Life seemed good until once again, it wasn't. My bank account was draining out money to those that I was working with to build my brand. And my sweet mind didn't realize that I was allowing myself to be taken advantage of. And so I let go of every person that I was working with, realizing that it was my ego who hired many of them. And I was sued by 2 of them in the process. So at 27, I was once again feeling lower than ever. And yet I had learned to stand up for myself as a woman, listen to my gut, and become a businesswoman in its own right without ever meaning to. And after discovering my own internal power, I listened to the voice at every chance that I got. And the voice is what I call that internal intuition. I learned that I could change my reality by changing my thoughts, my feelings, and beliefs. This stemmed from listening to my intuition, even if it didn't make sense. And so I moved to LA where things began to once again flow because I followed the calling of the voice. I created a mobile app for the detox, which went #1 in 6 countries with no paid advertising. And that was in 24 hours. And I have to thank the community for that because people from all over the world were sending me messages on Snapchat saying, you're #1 here, you're #1 there. And I remember when it hit #1 in the US, I had just landed from a flight and I honestly couldn't believe it. It was greater than my wildest dreams, but of course it was happening because I had put it out to the universe. After that, Random House, my dream publisher, gave me a 2-book deal for $500,000. I was in my calling and I was feeling in alignment. And for the first time in my life, I stopped allowing my negative thoughts and my past to determine my future. With these new insights, I began making improvements in my life. And as a result, I started to attract more positive experiences, which grew as I kept reading, learning, studying, applying, and practicing. Now, over the next few years, there were some incredibly challenging moments and some absolutely beautiful ones. I was growing as a person, healing myself of the eating disorders, and really understanding the why behind all of our decisions. This is where the Dream Binder came from, a toolbox that is now my most prized possession. And the Dream Binder became my guiding light for healing, transformation, and manifesting. And then I was hit with another moment in time where I questioned everything about myself. After visiting Africa during a volunteering trip for a month, I returned back to LA during Christmas and found myself in one of the greatest depressions I'd ever experienced. I couldn't understand why I was so unhappy. I, quote, had it all, and yet when I looked around myself and everyone around me, everything was mirrored of unhappy people spending money on things that they thought would change their internal state. After a massive breakdown one night, and I remember it distinctly, I stood in the shower only to slide down the wall, and I sat there crying. The voice came back and told me to go to Paris for New Year's and dye my hair brown. I did not understand why. Why am I going to Paris? Why am I telling nobody that I'm going to Paris? And the voice was very distinct and said, go to Paris, tell no one, and post a photo on New Year's Day saying, woke up like this, with a photo of the Eiffel Tower and brown hair. And so I listened to it. I didn't question at this point, and I did just that. And what I have learned is when I follow the voice, things align. I found a ticket, a hotel, everything lined up when I listened to that voice. And little did I know the voice would be guiding me to sell all of my belongings and move back to Paris after my second book came out a few months later. Once again, I packed up and moved with no idea of what or why I was being guided to do. And at this point, I had traveled around the world as an international model. I had moved back to London after my last modeling job in New York. From London, the voice told me I needed to go to LA, where I did. And now from LA, it was telling me my time there was up. And so I moved to Paris. And for the next 2 years, I went through what I call a soulbatical, entering a cocoon within myself in order to find out who I was. And I emerged with the greatest awareness of myself, my identity, and what I was to be doing on this planet. And then the pandemic hit. I felt like I was just getting clarity about my life and my purpose, and I was being forced back into my old self. I went from LA, where I had then moved back to temporarily after many years on the road, living in Paris, living in Bali, and in London. And the voice once again drove me back to LA, where I was there for 2 months before the pandemic hit. I had just emptied my storage unit. I felt settled. I felt grounded. And the pandemic hit. And literally overnight, I had to put everything back in storage, get a plane ticket. And I went back to London, where I met back up with my on and off 6-year relationship. And I lived there during shutdown. And so, yet this was actually the greatest gift, as I was able to see the old parts of myself and the new versions that were emerging. I once and for all ended a 6-year on and off relationship in London, where I had gone for lockdown. And normally after a period like this, I would have traveled, I would have met friends globally, but this was not an option. The world was shut down. And so I listened to the voice, which told me to move to Miami. And that's not to be said that I wasn't feeling pain. As the voice guides me and tells me things that I should be doing, it's still painful. During this heartbreak, I felt my heart literally shattering into 5 million pieces. And it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. What I then learned was that we were ending a soul contract and karmic debts. And that is why it was so painful, because I knew that this was the ending once and for all of many different reasons. And so as I moved to Miami, I had been there 2 times previously with friends, and I knew very, very little about the city. I didn't know that it was open during lockdown. I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't Googled it. I hadn't seen it on the news. I only knew one person to which I had never met him in person. We were virtual friends from the Tony Robbins Platinum community, and I asked if I could stay at his place for a few months and offer him rent. He said yes, and I moved in a few weeks after leaving London, making a stop off at my mom's house for 3 weeks, where I did some incredible inner child healing work. And although my heart had shattered during this breakup, I found myself happy in a way that I'd never experienced. I realized that everything was happening in divine timing. And in these moments, I realized that the universe gave me the best opportunity to test all that I knew. After a month of living with my friend, I decided that I was going to stay in Miami, where I signed a lease on an apartment and created what I called the Sky Palace. And having looked around at different places, I got really clear on what it was that I wanted. I knew that I wanted bright, white, open. I wanted to see the sunset. I wanted huge windows. And the moment that I walked into that place, I just knew. And so the Sky Palace became my oasis, and everything that this embodied. It was a new sense of love and trust that I had within myself and my life. This is also when I began truly falling in love with myself and becoming what I call extra. And I personally love being extra because to me, this is all about vitality and vibrancy and not caring what other people think of me. Rather, I do things because I'm following my own inner guiding. And so every night I would light candles. I'd put on my beautiful fairy lights. I would watch the sunset and I would marvel at the life that I was living in. And I remember that I had a friend come over one afternoon or one evening, and he said, "Nikki, there is no way that you do this every single night." I said, I do it every single night for myself. And I was now ready to teach everything that I had learned about manifesting to others. It felt in alignment, and I felt in the right place, the right time, the right calling. And in this expansive state, I created programs that embodied everything I was living, and my clients saw incredible success. Life wasn't without challenges, though, at this point. I was still going through tremendous hardships behind the scenes, but now I had my dream binder and a purpose to fuel me through them. And this is when I met my now husband. 6 months after breaking up with my ex, my husband slid into my DMs asking about a recent trip that I was on. A month of us talking online led to a phone date, a FaceTime date, then him coming to Miami to take me out. And the rest is history. I knew what I was embodying was something that needed to get into the hands of others. And that is when I turned the Ultimate Transformation Program, which was a one-on-one at the time, into a group coaching program. I wanted to be able to help as many people as possible to live a life of meaning and love. Now my purpose has grown way beyond just changing my own life. I do believe that I was put here on this planet to make a massive difference in order to help others overcome their greatest fears and limiting beliefs in order to live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And what started as a company under my own name has shifted to a sharper life, which embodies everything and all areas that we go through in this lifetime. I talk about business and mindset and manifesting and spirituality and sex and relationships and travel, everything that will make you have a sharper life. I also created a podcast under the same name, and I am honored to share my knowledge and interview other incredible experts and present this to you just as you're listening now. And today, my brand has helped over hundreds of thousands of people across the globe to see massive success in their lives too. From transforming your health through my detox to creating passionate relationships and stepping into you 2.0, everything I do is based on my own healing and transformation. And truly, it's a blessing to get to wake up each and every day and witness the lives of others radically transform just by applying the principles that I teach in my courses, my master classes, and books. Every single thing I share is based on spirituality, neuroscience, psychology, and everything is backed by research. And so now that you're here and you've gotten to know a little bit more about me, I'm excited to actually hear more about you. So whether you are listening to my podcast and you've been following for a while, or you jump into one of my master classes or the Ultimate Transformation Program, I cannot wait to witness your incredible success story too. And if there's one thing I can leave you with before we get started, it's this. Your success is inevitable and you're always on the right path. There is more out there for you, and you just have barely scratched the surface. And I am living, breathing proof that this is true. Everything is possible. You will heal, you will manifest, and you will create the life of your dreams if you are willing and ready to step into that next version of yourself. And so it has been 10 years full of love, ups and downs, amazing transformations. I have built amazing friendships with clients, and I personally will continue on this journey, and I look forward to helping you to have your transformation. And so that's just a little bit about me, my journey, 10 years in the making, and it's wild to sit here and think that all of that and so much more has happened in 10 years that I have been sharing my life with you on Instagram. And honestly, I cannot wait for the next 10 years. And until next week, here's to a sharper life.